So, Mr. Konteh, you are the Deputy Managing Director for Sierra Leone Commercial Bank, and you have been working here for about 16 years now, so you know this bank quite well. Now, before you started working here, the bank was founded, which was in 1970, and at that time it was mainly meant to serve local people. In what way has that changed over the years?
Um, First, let me thank you very much for the interview. As you rightly mentioned, this bank was established since 1973. Um, the vision actually then was to basically bring Sierra Leoneans into mainstream banking, whereby you have a bank that is owned and managed by Sierra Leoneans. As to its outreach, even as far back as then, it was not only limited to serving Sierra Leone. It was meant to link banking in Sierra Leone locally to banking outside Sierra Leone, and that vision remains intact, i.e., we operate not only to serve the local market, we operate with a global perspective. So our operations have evolved obviously because of size and changes in technology, the market landscape. There has been a lot of development in the industry over the last 39 years since the bank was established. As I speak, we remain the largest in the industry with international affiliation and correspondent banks across all the major cities of the world. So yes, we are a local bank, but we operate not only locally, we operate at international level as well. I mean, whatever parameter you can think of in terms of banking, as far as banking and financial services go. Yeah, so that is how we operate.
Okay. Now I know that your bank is quite willing and looking forward to servicing these international investors coming in. What would your bank have to offer them?
Well, we offer a lot, as I already stated. In fact, that's something, it's an opportunity for us to create a further awareness in the minds of investors coming into Sierra Leone. We always say if you have the confidence to invest in Sierra Leone, you should have the same confidence to deal with local banks, i.e. banks owned by Sierra Leoneans, especially banks who've been around during the thick and thin of Sierra Leone, who've seen it all, who've seen the good parts and the bitter experiences of operating in Sierra Leone. So we are much more adept and much more seasoned and ready. And investors specifically should be rest assured that when they deal with local banks, their operations are guaranteed. Um, when it comes to compliance with international regulations, for instance, on anti-money laundering issues, it's the same. Banking these days is no longer national; it's global because we look at things globally. So there should not be any hesitation that when we operate with local banks, our funds, our investments, our services will be compromised. Rather, it's the other way around. I bet you, because of our experience in the market for the last 39 years, we operate like any first-class European bank. We have affiliations and correspondent bank across the world, and we deal in all major currencies of the world. So yes, I want to make an appeal to investors coming to Sierra Leone that your bank of choice should be a local bank. Sierra Leone Commercial Bank should be your bank of choice because we are the only local bank that actually knows the length and breadth of Sierra Leone. We've been here long enough to help guide them in their pursuits of their investments in Sierra Leone.
Yeah. Now, what worries European investors a little bit is inflation rate and interest rate. Can you say how you see the future for?
The future is bright. I mean, if we can only, last few days, the Minister of Finance was in Parliament delivering his annual budget for 2012. And it only takes for one to go through the document to realize that there is a bright future ahead of Sierra Leone. Um, we're all aware of the significant progress that the current government is making when it comes to areas like the mining sector, the agriculture, and the multiplier effects in the subsequent years is going to be huge to the extent that the Minister of Finance is predicting a double-digit growth in Sierra Leone's GDP, which will far exceed not only African standard, even European standard. So the prospect is huge for investors and for Sierra Leone specifically. So we see improvement in the economy, and we will remain a major player in that improvement by providing appropriate intermediation for both products and services for investors as well as people operating in Sierra Leone.
Yeah. So the GDP growth is estimated of being 51%.
Over 50%
Yeah.
in the coming year. That's
What would,
phenomenal.
of
And it's
course.
going to impact Sierra Leone in diverse ways. So we want to ensure as a bank we are at the center of it, to ensure the inflows and outflows of funds are securely and properly managed for the interest of investors, for the interest of Sierra Leone, and for our interest as a market player as well.
Yeah. And what do you think that would specifically mean for your bank for the next years?
It means good potentials in business activities, not only for investors, but more so for people at the second tier. You have local suppliers, local vendors who are actually providing services for these investors. So what we anticipate is volume of transactions being routed through us as by virtue of our handling of those vendors, who are actually providing, those service providers who are actually supporting these international companies like the African mineral and the London mining, the ADAX, etc., etc. It's going to be a huge opportunity not only for banks but for a lot of other business activities in Sierra Leone. Yes, the banks will have to be at the center of all of it because end of this is all about money and how the entire process of inflows and outflows are managed on behalf of everybody. So it's going to be huge for Sierra Leone, and what that will bring in, obviously, for the government, increase in foreign reserves, which is bound to impact, for instance, on exchange rate issues, because if the government has enough foreign reserves, the stability of the local currency is largely assured, and that creates capacity for the government to do more, and that capacity creates activities in which banks can come in to intermediate. So yeah, the multiplier effect is huge. It's going to be huge. But of course, these things I expect to happen over time. It's not just be a one-day thing. And so we are positioning ourselves through technology to ensure we can respond adequately to these changes in the landscape in Sierra Leone.
Yeah. Now the Sierra Leone commercial bank is government-owned. How much influence does, if at all, but how much influence does the government have on the
Operations.
daily? Yeah.
Absolutely no influence. I should state it very clearly. Yes, it's 100% government-owned, but we operate as a separate legal entity. We've been regulated by the central bank. So we operate as a complete autonomous corporate entity. We give due what is due to the government, i.e. the dividend at the end of each year as is appropriate. There is no influence whatsoever you can think of, be it politically or otherwise. We've been left to operate as an entity. Otherwise, we would not have survived 39 years if there had been political intervention. And I can let you into a simple secret. In 39 years, this bank has always seen 4 MDs, 4 managing directors. It shows the stability at the top. 4 MDs in 39 years. So it shows the stability that we operate as a separate and independent entity of government influence.
Yeah. Now changes might happen in the future because your bank is on the government's list for privatization.
Yeah.
What kind of investors, if you can answer that question, what kind of investors would the government look for specifically for your bank?
Well, I have to answer that from 2 perspectives. Personally, I have my opinion. Personally, I can speak as a Sierra Leonean. If I speak as a Sierra Leonean, I think it will be in the interest of Sierra Leonean investors to come up and buy shares when eventually this bank is put on sale. Because obviously the multiplier effect is for Sierra Leone. It's a win-win situation if Sierra Leoneans are to invest and buy shares. When you take it outside Sierra Leone, it means that invariably there also be transfer of funds to the foreign holders. It has implications as well for capacity issues in Sierra Leone. So yes, as a Sierra Leonean, I want to argue that yes, government lays hands off business by privatizing the bank, but preferably it should be Sierra Leoneans or Sierra Leonean institutions that should buy the shares. As a banker, there are a lot of benefits with privatization. It should bring in more efficiency, but most importantly, it brings in capital, fresh capital that we can draw upon to expand our operations, to operate with much modern oriented way of doing things in terms of technology, science, etc., etc. Yeah, so yeah, it's a good thing. But of course, for every good thing there are downsides as well. So we have to be mindful of the shortcomings of privatization because it has been proven both in theory and practice. There are a lot of challenges with entities that are privatized. It's not always a very good picture at the end of the day. There are also difficulties to be managed as well. So I hope the government, in its wisdom, will ensure that due consideration is given to the potential benefits as well as the potential cost for them to eventually take a position as to how and when to privatize the bank. But I think broadly, it's a good concept.
Okay. Any idea of when
Well, I'm
They
not
will.
sure, but referring to the recent budget, I think if I can quote, if I remember, it says that the government is going to explore the option of divesting minority interest in Sierra Leone Commercial Bank in 2012. So it's exploration and it's minority. So the indications are, for the foreseeable future, it will remain mainly or largely owned by government for the foreseeable future. That's
Okay.
how I see it.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Konteh, you have been in surrounded by investors, be it local or be it foreign. What do you think investors particularly need to take care of, and especially concern whatever is concerned money when investing in Sierra Leone?
I think foremost is to ensure you get a reliable bank because investment is all about money. So you want to be assured that your money is both overseas and locally are being conducted through a bank that you can depend on. A bank that is reliable, a bank that has been here, that knows exactly the terrain of Sierra Leone, not only Sierra Leone, that transcends its perspective beyond Sierra Leone to an international level, that can actually help guide your investment. So your first issue actually is to be mindful as to the bank you're conducting your business with. And that is why I keep appealing to investors, because initially they had this perception that local banks are not up to the challenge. We are more than up to the challenge. As I said, we have been around long enough that we know exactly what to do, and we interact and relate with international banks to our correspondent banks out there. So there is nothing that they need that we cannot satisfy, that we cannot provide or fulfill as far as banking service is concerned. So foremost, this will ensure they conduct their transactions with our bank, specifically Sierra Leone Commercial Bank, and their investments will be in safe hands. On other issues relating to investment in Sierra Leone, there are a lot, because there are a lot of improvement that the government has done, which is now public knowledge when it comes to registration of business, um, issues relating to accessibility to land. I think there's a lot of reforms in the statutory and legal aspects, ownership of title, closure of contract, the legality. Now we have the fast track courts looking at commercial cases, sort of goes to encourage investment in Sierra Leone. You know, if there's an issue with your company, it can be fast track in the commercial form. So commercial. So with all of the reforms happening under the directive of the government, and with when you look at the banking industry, specifically in Sierra Leone, there are a lot of development happening since the last 1 year. You have what we call the Financial Sector Development Program that is being pioneered by the central bank under, I think, the funding or the sponsorship of the World Bank. Basically looking at enhancing the financial landscape of Sierra Leone. We look at automating clients in Sierra Leone by early in the year, early 2012. We're looking at an enhanced payment system in Sierra Leone, which will ensure that funds can move between banks swiftly and easily and is secured. And what that will mean, for now, Sierra Leone is largely cash-based. You walk up to the station, the gas station, you need to take cash to buy your gas. Hotel is cash. So what all of this will bring is a lot of technology like plastic cards for payments in Sierra Leone in the new year. So yeah, the landscape is improving when it comes to the industry, the bank industry, because under the Financial Sector Development Program, not only are the regulations and the other statutory provisions are being updated, but technology also is being updated when it comes to banking in Sierra Leone, and that is being spearheaded by the central bank. Yeah, so a lot of improvements is expected. So things like internet banking, like ATM, use of debit cards, credit cards, automation of client transactions amongst banks. By 2012 to end of 2012 and early 2013, it's going to be like in any first world you can envisage. So there are prospects, a lot of prospects for people to be assured that banking in Sierra Leone is at the stage that it can be compared to banking in any other advanced country of the world. Its investors should be reminded of the fact that Sierra Leone, like most other African countries, we survived the recent crash of banks out there. We survived it because our approach to risk management is one that is very prudent. It's one that is very conservative. It's one that gives due premium on consideration of a lot of risk factors. Unlike, I'm not castigating bankers out there, but we are saying we are much more cautious and much more prudent and risk averse the way we do things. So, hence we are here. You didn't hear of government bailing out banks in Africa, let alone in Sierra Leone. We survive all of it. So there is no reason for them not to be confident with banks in Sierra Leone. If they have trust in Sierra Leone, they should have trust in Sierra Leone and banks. And as I said, we are very conservative bankers. And we don't take undue risk. So their monies are safe.
Yeah. Now you said a lot has been done over the last years, and of course that has been proven by being one of the 10 performers in
Yeah.
the doing business ranking of the World Bank. So that's definitely the case. You talked about the internet banking, for example. Right now, that would
Yeah.
still be a problem. You have the optic fiber
Yeah.
cable,
Cable,
which will be
exactly. Which enhance,
operational
yes.
in half a year, more
Yeah.
or less. So of course,
Yeah.
things will change
Improve,
for
definitely.
Sierra Leone.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh, so what we can say is that so in the last years the government did make let's say did make Sierra Leone a better place for
Mm-hmm.
investors.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see those efforts continuing?
I personally, yes. As a banker, yes, of course, because as a country, we cannot afford to do otherwise. I think we've come a long way short that it's but time things get better for everybody. And the trend so far, the indications and the signals so far are all pointing towards that direction. I don't think as a nation we want to turn back on that. I think whatever happens, we want to build on the successes of the current government. Of course, there are challenges they are facing, which is not unexpected. I mean, in any government, being Africa or otherwise, they are good. There are highs and lows. But we are saying the highs should be commended and the lows pointed out for them to work on. And I'm saying what they've done, achieved so far is commendable. And the banks, as they are, will continue to play a central role in expanding the economy, in our intermediation process, ensuring that for us, for instance, as a bank, we can commend ourselves for the intervention in terms of lending to the private sector.
Do you see that it becomes easier and easier for foreign investors to invest?
Definitely, definitely. With, as you earlier mentioned, with all of the indices and the ranking improving, the government cannot afford to turn back. If they are sixth today, I'm sure next year they want to be second. The other year they want to be first. So yeah, I see improving trend in doing business in Sierra Leone. And with the development, with the financial sector development plan that is being pioneered by the central bank, I see the banking sector being much more proactive, being much more up to date in terms of technology, being much more efficient, being much more poised and capacitated, to undertake big deal transactions. I mean, like my bank, there are a lot of strategic alliances we're formulating with international banks outside Sierra Leone. Sure that in the next year or so, it will place us at a pedestal in which we can undertake huge deals. So foreign investors don't need to raise capital outside Sierra Leone, hopefully in the next couple of months or a year or so. I mean, you can look locally and raise capital. In fact, maybe cheaper.